Welcome back. Today, we'll explore classroom management styles and techniques that can help you create a productive learning environment. Just like with any skill, mastering classroom management involves understanding different styles and choosing the right techniques to match your teaching style and the needs of your students. There are several styles and techniques to managing a classroom, each with its own strengths and challenges. The key is to be flexible and thoughtful in applying these strategies to create the best learning experience for your students. Remember, effective classroom management isn't just about maintaining order, it's about maximizing learning time. Remember, less time spent on discipline means more time for learning. Let's start by comparing two management styles, democratic and coercive/authoritarian. In a democratic classroom, you share decision-making power with your students. For example, you might involve them in setting class rules at the start of the year. This approach fosters a sense of ownership and responsibility. When students feel that their voices are heard, they're more likely to respect the rules and engage positively in the classroom. In contrast, a coercive/authoritarian style is more about maintaining control through strict rules and consequences. While this approach can be effective in maintaining order, it can also lead to compliance out of fear rather than understanding. For example, a teacher who imposes strict rules without student input might maintain order, but it could create a tense atmosphere. The choice between these styles depends on the context, but a democratic approach generally encourages a more positive and collaborative classroom environment. Next, let's discuss the importance of being proactive rather than reactive. Proactive classroom management is all about setting clear expectations and anticipating potential disruptions before they happen. For example, by teaching and practicing classroom routines early on, you can prevent confusion and off-task behavior. This approach is more effective because it minimizes disruptions, allowing for more uninterrupted learning time. On the other hand, reactive management involves addressing issues as they arise. For instance, if a student is talking out of turn, you might stop the lesson to address it. While necessary at times, relying too much on reactive strategies can lead to a chaotic classroom where much of your time is spent on discipline rather than teaching. Focusing on prevention rather than just reacting to problems helps you maintain a smooth, learning-focused environment. Now, let's dive into specific classroom management techniques. These are the tools you'll use to keep your classroom running smoothly. We'll look at two main categories: nonverbal interventions and verbal interventions. Nonverbal interventions are subtle, low-profile techniques that can correct behavior without disrupting the flow of your lesson. They're great for addressing minor issues quickly and quietly, keeping the focus on learning. Verbal interventions, on the other hand, are more direct and involve speaking to students to address their behavior. These are necessary when you need to ensure that expectations are clearly understood or when nonverbal cues aren't enough. Please also remember nonverbal interventions. These are powerful because they address behavior without drawing too much attention, helping you maintain control while maximizing learning time. While verbal interventions, these involve speaking to students to clarify expectations or address issues. When using verbal interventions, it's important to use a calm and respectful tone to avoid escalating the situation. Let's explore some nonverbal intervention techniques with examples and explanations. Let's start with planned ignoring. How do we use this? Imagine a student is quietly tapping their pencil during independent work. Instead of stopping the lesson to address this minor distraction, you choose to ignore it, knowing that it's not disrupting others. By not giving attention to this behavior, you prevent it from becoming a bigger issue, allowing you to focus on teaching. Again, if the student who is off task or doing misbehavior is not disruptive to the class, specifically to his or her classmates, then you can use planned ignoring. Second nonverbal technique is signal interference. Let's say you notice a student chatting with a neighbor during a lecture. You make eye contact with the student and shake your head slightly. This subtle signal communicates that the behavior needs to stop without interrupting the lesson. The student receives the message and refocuses, minimizing disruption and keeping the lesson on track. Other signal could be the use of hand gestures, slightly tapping the board or table, enough to make sound to signal the students to refocus on the lesson. But, doing these signal must be communicated early so that once you use them in class, the students understand what those signals means. Third on our list is proximity control.
Let's consider this scenario. A group of students is getting too loud during a group activity.
You walk over and stand near them without saying anything. Your presence alone reminds the students to lower their voices. This technique is effective because it quietly redirects behavior without stopping the flow of the lesson. Next is touch control. The scenario is, a student is fidgeting during a test. You gently place your hand on their desk as you walk by. How it helps. This light touch serves as a physical reminder to stay focused. It's a non-intrusive way to guide the student back on task, helping them and others maintain concentration. Just a kind reminder from our friends from DepEd, since most students are sensitive to or might misunderstand this, do not directly touch them to avoid problems. And lastly, like literally do not use words at all, use of silence. Let's say the class becomes noisy during a transition. Instead of raising your voice, you stop and wait silently at the front of the room. How it helps. The silence creates a natural pause, drawing students' attention back to you. This technique is effective because it uses the power of expectation. Students know that silence means it's time to listen, reducing the need for repeated verbal commands. But of course consider the timing and the duration of using this technique. Now, let's look at verbal intervention techniques, with scenarios and explanations. Under use of hints. Adjacent/peer reinforcement. During a discussion, you notice one student off task. Instead of calling them out, you praise a nearby student who is engaged. How it helps. This indirect approach encourages the off-task student to refocus by highlighting positive behavior in their peer, promoting a culture of peer reinforcement. Calling on students. A student is daydreaming during a lesson. You call on them with a simple question related to the topic. The other way is just simply calling or mentioning their name, then proceed on continuing your discussion. By calling the student's name directly, you bring their attention back to the lesson in a non-confrontational way, helping them re-engage with the material. Name dropping. Let's say, you're explaining a concept and notice a student losing focus. You mention their name in your explanation. As Jake might see, this connects to. This subtle inclusion reminds the student that they're part of the discussion, encouraging them to refocus without directly calling them out. Also, you can also use this when you need to call out their attention when they are doing misbehavior by calmly mentioning their misbehavior and their name, but not in a confrontational and demeaning way. Okay? But between calling on student and name dropping, I personally believe it's best to use calling on students because it's not prone to students misunderstanding. Next one on our list is interest boosting. Scenario: a student who loves sports is losing interest in a math lesson. You relate the math problem to a sports scenario. How it helps. Tying the lesson to the student's interests re-engages them, making the content more relevant and maintaining their attention. But, you can only effectively use this technique if you have enough understanding who your students are and what things they are interested in. So, know your students. Next is use of humor. A student is doodling instead of taking notes. You lightheartedly say, saving that masterpiece for art class? Humor diffuses the situation, gently redirecting the student without creating tension, keeping the classroom environment positive. Also, a fun learning environment because of a teacher who is good with his humor, can encourage and can catch the attention of students. But, please remember that not all people are gifted with such humor. It takes time and experience, although sometimes it comes naturally for others. Lastly, remember to choose appropriate topics and words when using this technique. I highly do not recommend using dark humor. For example, during a science class, the students are working on a group project. One student, Jordan, has been joking around and distracting their group instead of helping. Frustrated, the teacher walks over and says with a smirk, "Jordan, keep goofing off, and maybe you'll end up working in the cafeteria for the rest of your life." The classroom falls into an awkward silence. Some students laugh nervously, while others seem shocked. Jordan, feeling embarrassed and put on the spot, shuts down and refuses to participate for the rest of the class. Later, Jordan tells friends that the teacher is mean and doesn't care about them. The group project suffers because Jordan no longer wants to contribute.
Or some other worse thing might happen and we don't like that to happen. Last on our list under use of hints, antiseptic bouncing. Imagine a student seems frustrated and on the verge of acting out. You ask them to run an errand for you. How it helps. Removing the student from the situation before it escalates allows them to reset and return with a calmer mindset, avoiding a potential disruption. This technique also applies to the teacher, especially when you are on the verge of bursting in anger. Instead of saying bad things to your students, who knows what kind of, it's best if you will use this technique so you can remove him for a while, allowing both of you to calm yourselves. Make sure that you will send the concerned students somewhere they will not be exposed to danger. Next on our list is use of questions. There are many ways to use questions to somehow manage misbehaviors in our classes. Let's consider this scenario. A student is off task during group work. You ask, how is this activity helping you understand the concept better? How asking this question helps. This question encourages the student to think about their actions and their impact on learning, promoting self-reflection and responsibility. Also, you can use follow-up questions, enough questions to somehow convey to the students that they need to listen next time or else they will be asked with many questions. But, of course, be mindful how you will deliver such questions, because if the intention, let's say, is to put them to hurtful words by their classmates, I suggest to you to reconsider using other interventions. Just always on the safe side. Last set of interventions and under the use of requests or demands. First technique is direct appeal. For example, a student is using their phone during class. You calmly say, please put your phone away so we can continue. This direct but polite request clearly communicates your expectation, making it easy for the student to comply without feeling singled out. Next on our list is explicit redirection. For instance, a student, Sarah, is off task, and you say, Miss Sarah, instead of chatting, I need you to start on the assignment now. In explicit redirection, you give a specific and direct command to a student to change their behavior immediately. As you can notice, it is somehow similar to direct appeal. But, again, in this technique, the goal is to quickly redirect the student's attention or actions to the appropriate task or behavior without ambiguity. In direct appeal, it might sound more like, Sarah, you know it's important to stay engaged during class. Can you please put your phone away and pay attention? Here, you're appealing to her sense of responsibility, not just telling her what to do. How it helps. This clear directive tells the student exactly what behavior is expected, leaving little room for misunderstanding and helping them refocus quickly. Next is positive phrasing. For example, let's say you have a student, Mia, who often arrives late to your morning class. Today, Mia walks in just as the bell rings, making it on time for the first time in a while. As Mia takes her seat, you smile and say, Mia, it's great to see you on time today. I really appreciate you making the effort to be here right when class starts. This helps us all get off to a good start, and I'm looking forward to having you fully engaged from the beginning. Mia feels acknowledged and appreciated for her effort. By focusing on the positive behavior, you've reinforced the importance of arriving on time without bringing up her past lateness. Mia is more likely to continue this behavior because she's received positive feedback that makes her feel good about her actions. Positive phrasing is a powerful tool in classroom management. It shifts the focus from what students are doing wrong to what they're doing right, encouraging them to continue those positive behaviors. By recognizing and affirming good behavior, you help create a classroom environment where students feel motivated and respected. Another way we can use this technique is that instead of saying stop talking, you say, let's all focus on the task at hand. Positive phrasing promotes a cooperative atmosphere, encouraging students to correct their behavior without feeling criticized. Next technique is reminder of rules. For example, a student starts talking during independent work. You remind them, remember, we agreed on no talking during this time. By referring to established rules, you reinforce the expectations set at the start of the year, helping students understand that these guidelines are important and consistent.
But of course, it needs to be communicated particularly on the starts of the school year and make sure that it is followed consistently. So that reminding of rules will be easier if in cases you need to use this technique.
The next one is Cantor's broken record. Let's consider this scenario. A student refuses to start their assignment. You calmly repeat, "Please begin your work now," until they comply. How it helps. The repetition reinforces your expectation without escalating the situation, showing consistency in enforcing rules. Lastly, is "you have a choice" statements. Let's say you will use this to one student. Imagine a student named Emily who has been talking out of turn and disrupting the class despite several reminders and interventions. You've already tried nonverbal cues and direct redirection, but the behavior continues. You as the teacher might say, "Emily, you have a choice. You can either choose to stop talking and focus on your work, or you can take a break outside the classroom to calm down and come back when you're ready to participate appropriately. What do you choose?" How it helps. Giving choices empowers students, making them more likely to take responsibility for their actions and comply with expectations. By offering choices, you're giving Emily some control over the situation. This can help her feel more responsible for her actions and more likely to make the choice that aligns with classroom expectations. Emily considers her options and decides to stop talking and focus on her work. By providing her with a choice, you've addressed the misbehavior without escalating the situation, and you've given her a chance to correct her behavior in a way that maintains her dignity. To wrap up, remember that effective classroom management is about creating an environment where students can focus on learning. By using these techniques, you can minimize disruptions and maximize learning time. A few key takeaways. Less discipline time means more learning time, so focus on strategies that keep the classroom running smoothly. When using verbal interventions, always maintain a calm and respectful tone. Your goal is to guide, not to demean. Use low-profile interventions like nonverbal cues to manage behavior subtly, keeping the focus on the lesson. As you start implementing these techniques, consider starting with nonverbal interventions. They're quick, effective, and don't disrupt the flow of your lesson. As you grow more comfortable, you can incorporate more verbal strategies when needed. Prevention is better than cure. Focus on proactive strategies that prevent issues from arising in the first place. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to seeing how you apply these strategies in your classrooms.